Welcome, everyone. Dr. Seun Ogunjimi, also known as Dr. O, is currently the Student Success Coordinator for College of Nursing and Health Sciences, United States University. Dr. O is passionate about delivering impeccable patient care and producing nurse practitioners with exceptional passion for nursing and excellent patient care outcomes. Before joining USU in 2019, Dr. O held various clinical and teaching positions of increasing responsibilities at multiple healthcare facilities on the East Coast and West Coast regions of the United States. She is a practicing nurse practitioner, collaborating with various healthcare providers to provide patients and their families with the desired care and outcomes. She particularly finds a lot of joy in using personal experiences to assist adult learners and students whose first language is not the English language in finding the right balance to achieve their academic and clinical goals through integrating effective time management, effective communication, hard work, and taking advantage of strong organizational skills. She has active membership in the Sigma Theta Tau Alpha Beta Eta chapter here at USU, the American Nurses Association, the California Association of Nurse Practitioners Los Angeles chapter, the CANP Health Justice Committee, National League for Nursing. She volunteers. Her volunteer activities include, she's a member of the California Association of Nurse Practitioners, Health Justice Committee. Dr. O is currently on the item writer committee for American Nurses Credentialing Center, ANCC. And she also serves on a Nigerian-focused Health Matters Committee, IDUC. Aside from patient care, she has an extensive passion for teaching children and teenagers. She is happily married and blessed with 3 children. I'm happy to introduce Dr. O.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining at this early time. I know it's early for many of us, but thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Dr. Ain, for that introduction. And thank you for the opportunity as well. So let's go to the implicit bias. You can all see my PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm sure we've had implicit bias lectures before multiple times. We've probably read about it. We've had podcasts about it. We've had TED Talks about it. We've probably watched movies about it. There are so many ways we've had experience with implicit bias, as instructors, as colleagues, maybe at work, on our different professional nursing profession, and also even as an instructor at USU. But just looking at implicit bias, the topic itself, and what it entails under like a different microscope, a different hearing from somebody else, and also seeing it from a different view. So I'm just going to share that with you. And so before I go, we all talk about implicit bias. It's usually, the definition is a usually easy textbook definition of unconscious attitudes, the way we feel about other people, or the way we stereotype other people. So the definitions, I have a few definitions here, just so we can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about, I'm not going to go deep into, okay, racism and all of those. It's just that's simple line implicit bias. So let's go through some definitions. So social groups, the way we group characterize other people by ages, gender, ethnicity, nationality, disability, religion. And that is good, because if we don't have that ability to differentiate and to categorize, sometimes it's difficult to get things done, right? It's difficult to, all the social justice, it's difficult to deliver some of the things that we deliver in terms of care, in terms of justice, in terms of just doing the right thing. So when we fill forms, they'll tell us, the age groups, what's your gender, what's your ethnicity, the nationality, do you have any special consideration that we need to consider to be able to, as you're applying for this particular thing, is there something we need to know? So this is good. Now, what is implicit bias? Association that we hold in mind that we are unaware of. Now, this is tricky in the sense that sometimes the moment some people hear implicit bias, their ears rise up and they're like, oh no, it means I'm a bad person. It means I'm very judgmental. It means I'm not good. It means I'm not nice. Or it means that the way I treat other people is bad. But really, most of the time is something that we are unaware of. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are bad people or just, we're not nice people or anything. It's an attitude that we hold inside and it affects the way we treat other people or even the way we treat people that look like us. So sometimes, and then that's why I picked, that's why I'm so excited to talk about this because I'm talking about it from a perspective of somebody. So I'm used to listening to implicit bias from everybody that looks like me. But then I saw somebody that didn't look like me that talked about it. Not a white person, not a black person, but an Asian person. And I was interested. I'm like, oh, okay, let me hear what they have to say. And this is from her name is Professor Banerjee from Harvard University. And she really nailed what I thought was implicit bias because I felt like, yes, I think this is the closest that I've ever thought about implicit bias than the things that I think I've been fed all over. So I'll go there as soon as I get there. So stereotype is how we believe about other people. So for example, if I believe that everybody who has a tattoo, wears a leather jacket and rides a bike in Pennsylvania are kind of cultists, right? When I move to California and I see the same kind of people, my mind straight goes straight to the fact that, oh my God, these are the same people that I thought. But that's stereotype, right? I might be right, I might be wrong, but that is the way I have built my opinion about people in that category. All right. So now, why did I pick this topic? I did say that, I've heard from different people and I kind of like, felt like I think there has to be more, there has to be more to this because what I was feeling more is I was feeling more of resentment from people when you start teaching implicit bias. I joined the California Association of Nurse Practitioner Health and Justice System. And anytime we had a meeting, all we talk about is, oh, how somebody was not, was treating other people incorrectly and how they're doing it because this person is black or this person is this. And I'm like, oh, I mean, that is an assumption, really. Like, how do you know? You know, I mean, and I always feel uncomfortable talking about it because I'm black. I'm like, okay, well, I understand that you're trying to defend me or defend people that look like me, but how do you really know that that's the reason why this is happening? I think we should be more objective about things, how things are happening. And we did talk about, there was a situation in Texas where somebody lost their job because their job was forcing them to take some courses, which we all are supposed to do, right? Like, awareness and this and this. And the lady was like, no, the course is targeted at me because they think I'm a racist. And she was fired. And in my mind, and I was like, well, did they explain to her why she needed to do that course? Because when you throw something at somebody with the idea of the reason why we are giving is because you have implicit bias and you must begin to think of it that you have implicit bias, that person becomes resentful because you are accusing them of something that they may not even be aware of versus educating them that, look, we all have this. And that is, guess what? We all do it. We all are not aware of our biases. Our biases are not necessarily because of the color of the skin, of religion, or race, or anything. Our biases can be anything. And we all owe the kind of bias one way or the other. And being able to come back, just like the way as instructors, we tell our students and says, I understand how you feel. I've been there before. Gives them a sense of, okay, I'm not stupid. I am not alone. I am not the only one who's been through this. It's something that is genuine. Then the next thing will be we have to find a way to make sure that we are doing the right thing. After identifying what we are doing wrong, let's try to make it right. And we all are going to be taking this to make sure that we are on the right path. I think that kind of like explains it better versus, okay, you have to take this course. And the person, goes on to say, oh, why are you making me take this? I don't want to do this. And you're telling them, yes, you have to because this is why. Basically pushing things on people that they don't want and making them feel guilty for not wanting it. So So there is this thing by Dr. Mazarin Banerjee. Like I said, I took this course from Harvard University, and I was so glad I was able to do it because I had a lot of passion for, because as an instructor, I want to make sure that I'm balancing the idea of providing quality education to my students, and also balancing it with the USU goal in our mission statement. And also at my workplace, I also want to make sure I'm balancing my relationship with people. I do not want my relationship with people. I don't want people to walk on eggshell around me. I want people to be able to address me like the part of them and not feel like, oh, if I say this thing, then I'm in trouble. Or if I say this, I'm in trouble. I want them to be able to say things that they will say to everybody else, objectively, without looking at me and say, well, if I say she's wrong, then I'm in trouble because I said she's wrong, even though she's wrong. And then I also want them to be able to judge me correctly. Besides, so if you say I'm wrong, then you must be able to tell the other person on the other side that they are wrong as well. So it's just the fairness and the equity, it's very important. But at the same time, also making sure that we are delivering it correct way. So like she had this statement that she made, that there are parts of our mind that are quite unreachable, even with all the power of conscious awareness. Even that's a part of ourselves. Sometimes we think we know ourselves, but we don't. We say, oh, I know I can never do that. No, you don't, because you've never been there. We always assume that we'll react to situations certain way, but we don't really have it unless we have been in that situation. So come with me. Let's go to the objectives of this PowerPoint, of this presentation. So the why of the topic, I already mentioned that. I'm exploring to see, what actually kind of resonates with my view and my own thought process about implicit bias, and also how to truly balance this issue of implicit bias without really going overboard, but also addressing the reality of it for everybody, for me and for the people around me, for my students, and not just for at my workplace, everywhere that I go to, making sure that I'm balancing this topic with the reality that we face at work and everywhere we go. Now, how does our human mind work? And how does our mind influence our decision? How well do you know your mind? And how can you outsmart your mind to overcome implicit bias? And there are different this will blow your mind. The online test, we probably won't be able to get to it, but this will blow your mind and it's fun. It just kind of gives you it makes you feel comfortable about your bias. Like, not that, oh, so I'm so biased. Great. But it's like, oh, I'm biased. Oh my, okay, what can I do? And they have all these fun little boxes and categories of where they put the biases, and so you kind of test whichever one you feel comfortable in, but very non-judgmental, So all right, so this our mind. So that does our mind work. Our mind processes information that is in front of us, even if it's irrelevant, misleading, or outright wrong. That's how our mind works. We process them. We don't just look at things mindlessly. We think about things. Milliseconds, our mind works on things. We look at somebody and we decide they're bad, they're good, they're nice immediately. I would decide if we like them or we don't like them. In like 5 seconds, we decide, oh, I like this person. And sometimes you don't even know why you like them. Maybe you like them because they smile a lot, or maybe because they look pretty, or because they look handsome, or they look, they just have this charming smile. But our mind will always, always make that decision. And there is, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But what is wrong is what do you do afterwards? How do you make decision afterwards? How does that decision affect somebody else, or even affect you, or the person next door, or the person beside you? So our mind will process information, whether it is right or wrong. If it's misleading, we can look at somebody and decide based on their age that they are appropriate for this thing, or they're just too old, or they're just too young, or they're just not experienced. Or we can look at somebody and say, oh my God, this weight does not fit this job description, or this person that cannot do this particular thing. Now, some of this might be right because there are some jobs that require some skills, some age, some weight, and all of those. We can't take that out, but we can't make our first impression based on that to decide whether somebody qualifies or somebody does not qualify. And there is this, I think it was called a Sufi poet in the 13th century. It was quoted to have said that each of us is a jackass with weights of danger strapped on. And I thought that was funny. that everybody, there's nobody, there's no exception. We all have angels stacked on us, but we all have that particular bad thing that is attached to us. But our ability our ability to control, our ability to change them, our ability to think about them consciously makes us different. Okay, to be able to fix our biases. Now, I want you to just look at this implicit association. If I say Romeo, what would be your answer? Romeo and Juliet. See, thank you, Dr. Stahovich. Yeah, it just came. I mean, she didn't have to look up the answer. She didn't have to think about, because we all know Romeo and Juliet. It's easy. Even a fifth grader can tell you right away, Romeo and Juliet, salt and
Pepper.
salt and pepper, and thunder and
Lightning.
lightning. Thank you. Yeah. See, look at how we can quickly associate that. And imagine the thousands and a million other things that our powerful minds can associate so easily. So our approach to the implicit bias is the scientific to prove that implicit bias is real, but not to say, okay, so because you have bias, there's something bad really happening to you, you're a bad person. But it says if you are biased, you are simply a human being and you need to work on it. You need to try to be a better person. Okay. There is this example that was given to us in the class that we did. These two tables surface the same. And I know that we are all intelligent people here. We've been doing this. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. We're talking about this for a long time. We've been trying to be fair for a long time. So right now, I know this audience that I have, I'm not talking to an audience of ignorant people. I'm talking about audience of well-aware. We understand the assignment, and we work very hard every single day to improve how we relate with ourselves and how we relate with our students and how we relate at workplace. But I just wanted to give you like a brief history. So this table surface was something that was done like in this, I think a long time ago during the time of Da Vinci. And, there was, oh, is this table surface the same? And of course, if you look at it, you could say, oh, I think they're the same, because we kind of have an idea of what I'm going to talk about, right? But then look at the horizontal and the vertical. It doesn't really look like the same. They don't really look the same. So naturally, people are like, no, they're not the same. And then Da Vinci was like, okay, let's measure it. I mean, that's a smart person who thinks, why don't you just measure it instead of arguing? And then they measured it and it was the same, right? But they don't really look the same, right? So just what I'm bringing out from here is sometimes we just need to test things. The scientific part of things is so important. And sometimes we ignore that. We ignore the scientific, we ignore the testing because we want to be right. Because we think our intuition, we think oh, my gut just told me. Well, sometimes guts work, but in a lot of situations, your gut is wrong. When I was just finishing nursing school, one of the things I learned is use your gut. Well, don't use your gut. Please use what you learned in school, right? Don't use your gut to take care of me. Use the things that you were taught in school. Evidence-based practice guidelines. Don't assume that, okay, because somebody said use your gut, there are times where your gut is good, but gut might get you in trouble. The gut might help you overcome some things, but 9 out of 10 following practice guidelines and doing things the right way helps than just going with our guts. That's another test that we did. It was the cultural test of men and women, career and home. And the funny thing about this thing is that I grew up in a culture where men are rated higher than women, where men are associated with work, women are associated with home, caring for children and others. And despite the fact that that's the culture that I grew up in a home of working parents. My mom was working. My dad was working. So my mom was never a stay-home person. My dad was never the only one bringing in the money. Both of them were working parents. But yet, the cultural understanding of the role of a man and a woman still imprints in my head in such a way that when I took the test, I associated men with career and I was associating women with home. I took the test and I'm like, well, before you take the test, it makes you tell the kind of, I feel it, like you ask a few questions, and the question, I'm like, men and women are the same. I believe women can hold top positions anywhere. I believe in fairness. Those are the things that I feel there, because that's how I truly feel, right? But when I took the test, it tells me, girl, you are attributing kitchen and home to women, and you are attributing men to career. So I'm like, oh, why? Because that is natural thing that comes to me because of where I grew up, right? Despite the fact that I don't even fall into that category. My parents did not even fall into that category, but yet because of my upbringing, I still hold that to be true. There's another test that we did about the checkerboard illusion. And this is, I think it's by a professor somewhere in MIT in the early 1995. And it talked about, how we look at things. So look at the checkerboard that everybody can say. How many colors can we see there? So I'm looking at the chart. I think, hold on. Pepper, okay, that's it. Okay, two colors. And Dr. Eda said 4 colors. There are only 2 colors actually, like the gray and the white color are the ones that you can see here. But it's not like at the test, at the long test, I don't, but when we did it in class, I was blown away. It's only one color. It's only white. There is a way they kind of shaded the colors to make the other one, the light fall darkly on the other side so that it appears like it's gray, but it's the same color. Isn't that interesting? Same color. But then we can like say A is gray and B is white, and we can debate it over and over again because that's what we see. But the reality of it is not what it is. It is what the person wants us to see. That's what we see. But at the end of the day, they were both white colors. All right, so let's go to look at that diversity. Look at all the beautiful faces that we can see. Young, old, strong, weak. I mean, different colors, right? And when we look at this, we look at diversity, which is good. In my head, we're like, wow, what a diverse population of people. They're so diverse, wonderful. But then in our thinking of the diversity, our head is already working on, can I trust this person? Can I trust this person with glasses? Can I trust this person with a green scarf? Can I trust this person with or the way they parted their hair? And this person is smiling too much. Maybe I shouldn't trust them. No, when you smile too much, I'm not sure if that is something that it's a red flag, right? We kind of think of so many things now, based on our experiences. And is this person smart? This person smart enough? Does this person have the right character? Or is this person talking normally? Are they dressed okay? And that's what affects the way we vote. Can I vote for this person? And this is so funny because before today, I had to change my PowerPoint 3 times prior to the election and after the election because a lot of things change and I'm like, just remove this, just take this out, just take this out, don't put this in there. Because I want to make sure that I'm very careful. But then one of the things that I listened to before the election was a lot of like little focus group that they had, and there was this young group, focus group of young people who said, "Oh, this particular candidate, I just don't feel like." And the person that was asking the question was like, "Okay, what do you know about this person?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really know anything." But the person was like, "But you don't feel like, and yet you don't know anything, and yet you didn't even care to find out anything about this person." So it's like, where do you really want to stand? And the answer here is that sometimes we're afraid of our biases. We do not want to be wrong, right? We want to be right. But because we don't want to be wrong, we are afraid to search deep into our heart to see why, the true reason why we don't like somebody, or the true reason why we're not giving somebody a job, or the true reason why we feel like this student should not be passing this class, or the true reason why we feel like this person does not deserve my time, or the true reason why, even if you're working bedside, you look at the patient and you're like, oh, this is the reason. You don't want to really express your true reason, but you find something on the surface to give you permission structure to treat them the way you are treating them. And that's some of the things that we see with, how we trust people, how we judge people, how we judge people's character, how we assume people's dispensation or just even that, even how we help them. Sometimes we help people because we assume something about them, which is sometimes is not even true, but we just assume it, that it makes us feel good. I'm doing this, and so let me just do it anyway because I think this is why I'm doing it, without actually necessarily knowing why am I doing it. So now, there was an example that was given at one of the classes about some of the attribution errors that we face when we are thinking of implicit bias. So, for example, why are women chosen or not chosen for certain roles in the society, right? There was a story about the Symphony Orchestra of the Americans, and in the early 1970s, where women were never chosen to play in the orchestra, right? And then I think one day somebody woke up and said, you know what? And the reason they were giving the old time was, oh, maybe the women are just not, they're not good enough, or they're not applying. We don't have a lot of people applying for this position, or the women just don't have what it takes, or the women are just, no, we just don't see them. And then somebody said, let's do an experiment. Let's change things around. And what they did was that they decided to do a blind auditioning, whereby there's a curtain between the the uh the judges and the applicants. So when you are applying, they don't know whether you're a male or female or whatever your gender is. They don't. I think they have a certain age, so you can be a kid and come, even if you're a prodigy. But then they allow you to stay in a certain room, put a curtain in between, and then they ask you to play. And guess what happened? When they started doing that, they got 50% more women than ever before. Why? Because they were building their the auditioning, and the selection process was based on the talent. It was not based on the person. It was not based on the looks. It was not based on what this person might be offering. It was based on it. So they had to rely solely on their ears to pick somebody, to select somebody. And they selected a lot of women. Now the question is, did the women practice extra because they knew that they were going to be on a blind auditioning? I don't think so. They've always been good. They've always had the same talent the whole time. But because the way the selection process was done was based on the bias of the people that were the judges. I mean, they're human beings. They look at you like, oh well, maybe she's weak, or maybe she cannot do it properly, or maybe she may not have enough time to come to rehearsals. I don't think she will be able to meet the demands of this job or the demands of this symphony orchestra. But then they were disappointed. They saw all these women, they were admitted into it, and what they did was they found out that this this method is working, and they just continued. And that's how they've always been auditioning based on their ears and not on their eyes. They base it on what is the objective factor, the objective factor in this case, not the subjective factor in the case. And we can also say, why is a person struggling at work or school? We can make excuses of why the person is struggling. We can say, this is why. But the objective part is, maybe instead of assuming or thinking we know, we should ask why. We should take the step to know why. Most of the time we could be right. Like I said, sometimes our instincts might be right, but you don't just want to stay on a right instinct, but on the fact that you proved that instinct is either right or wrong. When I was in high school, I was like taking physics. One of the things that blew my mind in the physics class is this test that we did, the Archimedes principle, that showed that ice cube floats in water because it displaces a volume of water equals to its own weight. When you put ice in a cup and it's like full, right? What we had in mind then was that when the ice melts, the water is going to spill over. But then the science of it is that no, when the ice melts, the ice is equal, because we assume that the ice was heavier than water. And so when the ice melts, it's going to spill over. But then the ice melts and it's the same as the level of the water. Why? Because there's a principle behind it. And that's how we need to be looking at things objectively. what is the science behind it? How do I prove this? How to make sure that I'm right? So that if the push comes to or whatever it is, something happens, I can say I dotted all the T's and I dotted all my I's. And I'm sure that I did this, I make the decision based on evidence. I'm not making decision based on what I feel. I'm not making decision based on what I heard. I'm making decision based on the policies that is in place, my evidence, and making sure that I'm on the right side, doing the right thing so that I'm fair to everyone and such that I can repeat this same thing. So what is research? Research is when you find a research result, if you replicate the research, if you replicate the test the same way the person that did it, you should get the same outcome. If all things are equal. If all things are not equal, of course, you have to disclose and say, okay, well, on the fourth day of something, there was rain and there was storm that kind of impacted this particular research. So our result might not be exactly different, but it doesn't mean that the research or the result from the previous research was wrong. We just have to redo our own research. But if you repeat everything that was done in that original research, your result should be the same. That's the essence of research. That's the essence of evidence-based practice. So you repeat. So when you follow through your bias using all the processes, you should be able to objectively come to a conclusion, and that should inform our decision-making process. All right, so the next one, now we talk about how our mind works. I talked about this already. And so there are different types of biases. I think I must have mentioned one or two while talking, but just kind of let's go one through this quickly. We have cognitive bias, we have availability bias, we have confirmation biases, we have anchoring bias, and we talk about our brain making assumptions. So a cognitive bias is the way we think, right? We make assumption, we misinterpret, and we just don't care to change it. So like, oh yeah, it sounds right. It feels good. It makes me feel like, yes, that's the way I feel about like what I said. People on bikes. So let's say one of my friends decides to say, hey, meet George or meet Alex. And with my understanding of my thought process about bikes, tattoos, and leather jackets. And I see Alex on it, and he said, oh, meet my son, George. And I see George with tattoos all over, and I see George in a leather jacket, like a sleeveless tattoo leather jacket with a bag. And my mind is like, oh, okay, George, hi. I could decide in my mind to say, oh, wow, what a son you have there. Or I could say, hi, George, how are you doing? My name is Seun Ogunjimi. What's up? And we talk about it, and then tells me, oh, I'm a professor of science in United States University or in UCLA or this. That clearly destroys whatever I'm thinking in my head, because that means this person is not what I'm thinking. But why? I'm able to get to the bottom of it because I want the extra mile to find out, to get to know the person, not just allow the person to go away with me having that thought process and thinking, oh, my friend, wow, poor friend, look at you. Is this your child? Is this what you're going through? And just making all this assumption in my head. And then so availability bias is also things that comes to our mind, association with Romeo and Juliet. So if you have a text and says Romeo and the options in the ABCD, there's no Juliet there. We probably will get it wrong because in our mind is Juliet, and then we don't, maybe there's a comprehension passage you're supposed to read, but because you assume, and this is one of the things I tell my students when you're taking the APE exam. I said there are things that come to your mind because you are so familiar with memorizing questions. When you memorize questions for so long, when you see a particular phrase and a word, the answer comes to you so quickly. You sometimes don't even bother to check through the options that you have in front of you. And then if you are going to be unlucky, then one of the options that you're thinking about is in it, but because you are not thinking deeply into the questions that you get it wrong. And sometimes they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I said, yes, because there's an availability, there's an options for you to think this way about this particular disease process. You're already thinking about, you already have this mindset about this medication, and you already have this mindset about assessment. Because they throw in race, gender into this particular question doesn't necessarily mean that is even important to the question. You still need to read the question to the end, look at it and see what exactly they are asking of you. And that will help you to answer the questions versus, oh, there's a gender issue here. They might be talking about the gender. Or there is a race. Oh, they might be talking about this. There has to be something about the race that I need to focus on. Might, yes, that might be true, but maybe sometimes it's not true. So you need to follow the process of reading through the question and then making your decision based on the information that has been provided to you. So that's availability bias. The confirmation bias is we pay attention to what makes us right. I'm sure a lot of us have done that before, where you're like, oh, we look for things that supports our decision. We look for reasons to believe that our decision is right. We try not to go outside of what we think our decision is right. So for example, I didn't put this in that. I think I took this out of it, or maybe I accidentally took it out, but I was this NASA project that happened a while back where there was this lingering um uh decision not to go into the space in that moment in that season, but the leaders wanted to do it. I mean, there was so much pressure on them that they have to deliver and they have to do it and they have to go. And but then they're like, okay, there's this particular, I think there was a concern about something on on the space jet. And they were like, let's do a research on this. And they did a kind of crash research. So the research was mostly making them feel like, okay, yeah, we could do it. It's not that bad. And then they did it and they went ahead with that project and they lost lives. And they lost the it was one of the worst incident, but they lost lives. But they had this lingering instinct to stop and really follow through with the research to test all of the systems to make sure that it's safe to do this. But they didn't. Why? Because they wanted to be right at all times. And then they had this, everything seemed to work. All the confirmation came from different places that says they are good to go, while ignoring that simple warning that somebody brought to them and said, I'm still concerned about this particular one. Whether they consulted other expensive research to tell them that we should go. Versus why is this person concerned about this little thing? Let's look at it. Okay. And we have the anchoring bias, where information that we know before can be something that kind of anchors our decision. And even if we should not focus on that one. And like I said, our brain will continue to make assumption. All right. So this, I want to go to university-wide implicit bias, diversity and inclusion. We had this, like I think 2021. I do remember that I was part of a group in the school. And Dr. Tarovich was there. We have other people, Dr. Gagos, a few people, because I knew the school was really concerned about this, and we had this, and that's why I said that I'm talking to a group of intelligent people who have been doing this for a long time, that we are not new to implicit bias. We're not new to what it could do to our students or even to do to in our workplace. And so I know we did this, we talk about, what do we, I know these are the things we discussed then that we're trying to put into the curriculum to make sure that it's works with the school, learning objectives and the college learning objectives and the class learning objectives. And what I kind of like went back and looked at them like, oh, we actually did this. Oh, we actually did an awesome job then. But what we focused on was more like, how do we include all this into the assignments? How do we make sure that students are able to do differential diagnosis, identify medical conditions, vulnerable populations? We talk about whether to make the assignment optional or required. Are we going to put a rubric to it? At what level are we going to do it? But then all these things are wonderful. But in reality, really, if you go to a clinic, nobody should be looking at you, whether you're black, white, blue, yellow, young, old. You're a patient. That's who you are. And everything that needs to be done must be done per guidelines. There is no reason to assume because somebody is 75-year-old when they are weak, they are weaklings, you have to offer them help that they didn't ask you to offer them. It's an assumption. And sometimes it creates a problem because then you try to help people when they don't really need your help. Or you try to assume that somebody, because you see somebody in a wheelchair, your instinct is say, can I help you? Can I push you? But the person is like, no, I can push myself. Why are you trying to push me? And then it becomes awkward, like, oh, okay, I was just trying to help, but this person did not ask for your help. This person is perfectly, has been on this wheelchair for so long, they can take care of themselves. So also, it kind of like, bring this awkwardness of, I was only trying to help you, well, I didn't ask for your help. Because the person who didn't ask for the help will feel like, oh my goodness, why are they treating me like this? And the person who is trying to help will feel like, oh my goodness, I was only trying to help. So we need to be able to balance it. Do they need our help? If they don't, then don't help them. Just do the things that you know is right to be done. So one of the things that one of the, that was last 2 years ago that I attended the ANCC, we had the item writing meeting, and they were talking about removing, I haven't seen any of their questions, so I don't know if they removed it or not, but they talked about removing the races in certification exam because to them it's very distracting. It's like the moment you see Asian, you're already thinking of, oh, greetings, food and stuff. The moment you see African American, you're thinking of GF house and stuff. But are those things really true? There has been research that says GF house are not the GF house calculation are not exactly correct. You can take care of the patient, without actually looking so much. And of course, you look at the liver function test, you look at the creatinine, you look at the BUN and all of those, but you can't say, oh, because I can't give this medication, I can't give this particular or I can't treat them this way. There have been a lot of high mortality in maternal mothers' death because there is this discrimination about, okay, if you have this high on this and this low on this, you can't have your baby naturally, you got to do a CS. And sometimes it's not true. Sometimes it's a case by case basis, and sometimes it's just you going out of your comfort zone to look at your patient holistically. Does this patient present with anything that is close to what is in the textbook? Why am I just doing this because I would like you to treat me like the textbook does, guidelines, but also I like you to look at me and see my symptoms versus just assuming that because this is what you think the symptoms is and this is the way you must treat it. Very, very important. So, those are the ways that different organizations, including our school, have tried to address the issue of implicit bias to make sure that being fair. We're being fair and we're just affecting equity to people around us. Okay. Now, there's something I want to show here. I think I'm almost done. So let's go to, I think it's okay, let me just go to step 1. Now, I've said all things about implicit bias and all of the things that implicit bias might look like. Like I said, I'm not going into like the specifics of, what all the other things that goes, but I'm just focusing on that word implicit bias. Now, how do you know your own bias and how do you kind of like beat that bias? What do you do? So there are some steps here. Remove irrelevant data when making decisions. Whatever it is that we're doing, anything that is not relevant, take it out. It shouldn't be part of your decision-making process. Or I just like this person, I just think this person is nice. That is, I just think, while that is good, but you have to set it aside, at least at the beginning, so that you can, especially when you have so many options. So it allows you to be able to be objective enough to make sure that when you make that decision, you're not making a mistake. Okay. I remember there was a time something happened and I think an instructor had approached and talk about, something a student had done and everything. And the instructor was very cautious. Like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I'm like, do the right thing. The instructor was looking at it based on, I don't want to feel like I'm biased towards this person. And I said, well, you are not biased towards this person. You are following the rules. The rules is very important to follow. It's very important to follow the rules if you're doing it the way it's supposed to be done. It doesn't mean you should bend the rules. If I kind of like veer off a little bit, I mean, bending the rules kind of makes it unfair, So for example, if going back to the orchestra thing with the American symphony and orchestra, if a woman comes and the woman plays the violin, or and one of the judges said, "Oh, I just want us to pick her because she's weak. Let's just encourage her because she's weak." While the judge is saying something that might be, nice in his or her own eyes, the woman might take offense to say, what do you mean that you are picking me because I'm weak? What do you mean? Don't you see that I'm actually doing this? I'm doing this job well? And what do you think will happen if, say, the woman was weak fully and she wasn't doing a good job, but they were like, oh, we're so desperate to put women in our orchestra. Let's just hire her. And then they had this huge concert. People paid thousands of dollars to come in there. And this particular thing was like, chun, 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 and just kind of broke the whole thing. Nobody's gonna give credit to them for picking somebody. They're gonna like, why would you pick somebody who doesn't know how to play? That would be the judgment, and people will stop going. So, because we're trying to do the right thing doesn't mean we should remove the standard or we say, okay, now let's just take out the standard to make it comfortable. No, I think that is where the problem is, where people feel like we need to break the rules, we need to lower the standards to be able to accommodate. And I think it's offensive to the people are trying to help, because people who are trying to help are also thinking as I'm smart, I'm competent, I can do this. Why are you thinking that when you lower the standard for me, then that helps me? Because then that kind of becomes the song, right? It becomes the rhetoric. People go out there and say, oh, the reason why they're doing is because they lower the standard for them. I scored, and I think one of our professors has said it before, in Nigeria, where some ethnic group in Nigeria are treated like they are given, like they were assessed at a very low standard. Versus, so we have the West, we have the North, and we have the South. I'm from the West. People from the South, for people from the North, are given, like, so if you scored 70%, let's say that's how you get to college. So if you score 70% in the West, mostly people in the West score like 70, 80, 90%. So it's a huge competition. But if you score 30% in the North, you are guaranteed an admission into college. Why? Because the standard is really low. And the thing is, oh, we are trying to encourage them. And then so you have a lot of people from the West who had worked so hard, who have studied so hard, who have a high hopes of getting into college, not able to get into college. Because why? We have to give people in the North we have to cut them some slack. We have to encourage them. How about encourage them by making sure that they are learning at the same capacity as the people in the South? How about encourage them by making sure they have the same opportunity, they have the same resources, they have the same teachers, they have the same the climate environment, the learning environment, like the people in the South and the West. Instead of doing that, what they did was that, oh, 30% you get in. And that has created a lot of issues. And if you go and look at our politics, it's a huge issue in our politics because we have a lot of uneducated people in power, people who don't know what they're doing, people who are there because they went through college, and you don't even know, like, how did you even get to college in the first place? Because what? Because when we lower the standard, what do you expect? The outcome is never going to be the same. You're not going to have the same. And if we do that, it's easy to do that in some, in some learning programs, but you cannot do that in healthcare. You can say, oh, I'm sure you are not really good. You're not a good surgeon. You're not really learning this, but we'll graduate it anyway because we need to meet our quota of diversity. Well, we just released a killer out there that will probably do a lot of harm. Doing Imagine, I used to tell the student the story about Dr. Death. I'm like, there's a Dr. Death that this guy was very charming. He had 2 PhDs, I think. He would talk to the instructors, and he missed over 1,000 clinical rotations because he knew how to sweet talk all of his professors. Then they all loved him. It would bring these bogus ideas like, oh, I'm working on this, and they're like blown away. And he missed a lot of surgical rotations. And this guy ended up killing over 30 people before he was arrested. When he graduated, it was a spine surgeon. Imagine that. He crippled people, he killed people, all very, very horrible things he did. That's what happens when we allow our eyes to judge, to inspire our decision making versus the reality of things that we're supposed to be following. So, like I said, remove irrelevant data, ask for opinion, be objective, look for data. What is it? What am I missing? Talk to people, ask for other people's feedback. Take a pause, while our instinct is good, but take a pause and think it through. Why am I doing this? So, I mean, dig deep into your own bias. Dig deep into your reason why you're doing what you're doing. And don't force yourself to remember everything. Try to write things down. So that way, and then be intentional, slow down, ask questions, and be open to accept criticism from others. I'll be open to say, okay, this is a bias that I have. What do you think? And let other people tell you if they feel the same way or if it's just, oh, I don't think that way. I'm thinking differently. Um, so this is the implicit association test that I said is scientifically backed. Sometimes it also confirms what we already know. So for example, even our own bias against people that look like us. So it's not just bias against people that does not look like me. It's also bias or does not think like me, does not worship like me, or does not go to the places I go to. It's also the bias against the people that look like me based on my experience. So for example, I just talk about the North and the South. My experience with the North is that they give them opportunities over us in the West and the South, not necessarily because they are good, but what if that particular person is good and the opportunity was not because they gave the person? Because I'm sure there are exceptional students in that place, in that region as well. And I'm sure things have changed over this many years, right? So this also helps know. And then if I see somebody from that culture applying to USU, and maybe let's say Dr. Salvich said, Seun, can you tell me? And I'm like, where is he from? Okay, from this. Okay. And I already have a bias, right? And it's not right. I should look at the resume. I should look at what the person brings to the table. I should talk to people. I should follow the protocol and then give my honest opinion based on the information that I have versus what I think I know. Okay. Um, so it says that, it reveals, so since I encourage everybody to take this IAT test, take your time and just, try to do and see. It helps you to kind of see the way you think is different from the way you act. Okay. And so, the IAT said millions of people have completed at least one form. And it talk about implicit bias against elderly people, against dark-skinned people. And usually that is usually the most that they report. We could say, things have changed, things have improved for sure, yes. But there's still a lot of bias for the elderly, for the disabled, for the people with dark skin. There's still all of those biases there. And then, but then we also have the bias that shows that we favor our own people who like me, people who are in my culture over the other people. And, we do that because it's just unconscious. And also it can hold the bias that we hold against our own people. We can hold bias against the people that we actually care about because we are overthinking things. That's why we need to slow down and think. Am I doing the right thing or do I just think is the right thing? So before you click on that, it will tell you that you are aware of the possibility of encountering interpretations of my IAT performance, which I may or may not agree. So kind of gives you like that red, stop sign. If you know you can handle it, don't go there. Because sometimes you'll be surprised. That Dr. Banaji said, I was surprised that Asian professor at Harvard University, studying bias. How am I biased? And she said, well, I am biased. When I did some of the tests, I realized I am biased. I am Asian, but I'm also biased. And I know everybody, so nobody can say, oh, I have never been biased. We all have our own biases. Now, how do we change our bias? So of course it's changed. It can change and it's been changing. So we have to give credit to that, right? But we can change also by choosing what we experience, what we learn, institutional policies like what we did at USU at that time to make sure that our students are getting information. We are teaching them, we are giving them life experiences. And also we talk about looking at over the years, so many things have changed from 2027 to 2020. We all know what happened all of those years. And then, but there is this important thing that I want us to take away from here. It can occur at 3 levels. Individual will always be number 1. You have to change first. We have to change first before we change our institutions, before we change our society. It can be, oh, the school has to do it, or no. If each person changes, then there's a collective institutional change, and then there's a collective societal change. Okay, so take away from here. Take away. We all have biases. Our bias can lead to poor decision making. Let's make efforts to know what our biases and try to change it. Now, there's this optimistic view that we all have blind spots, but we are also wired to learn, to grow, and to expand our awareness. And lasting change is possible when we do it at our individual. That's what I want to stress, individual level. Thank you.
Awesome. This was just great. Thank you so much, Dr. O. I really appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Oh, I see Roger has his hand up. Go ahead, Roger.
Oh, I was just applauding it.
Oh, that's applauding. I didn't notice the hands were moving at first. Sorry. There was a comment in the chat about from Micah that said, reminds me of when I told someone they had a beautiful accent and he was offended and said, maybe you're the one with the accent. And I felt so bad because I didn't realize it was offensive and had made sure not to do that again. And that, that's an excellent point. We always have to stop and think about, we're making an assessment on something based on our perspective. And obviously not the place where the other person is coming from. So beautiful work. Thank you. And that implicit bias assessment test put out by Harvard is a wonderful tool. I think it's great. So thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I see a hand up. I think it's a hand up this time. Micah, go ahead.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my comment, first of all, excellent presentation. I literally hung on every single word over the last hour. But what I was thinking as I was listening is that periodically I go into Coursera, and I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Coursera. It's a Google thing where you can buy classes or take free classes.